the qualities that was probably not encouraged very much in your house was flexibility, right? Right. Nor was the whole concept of equality encouraged, right? Yeah. So everything's terribly like this. It's all kind of authoritative stuff. And it's also about, I know the right way and you know the wrong way. Bottom line, right? Okay. When you start talking about relationships then, all of this gets really, really difficult. Because, first of all, remember we've all got these hundreds of terribly sensitive spots. Now, and they're all different and nobody knows about them. And curiously enough, when there are these emotionally sensitive spots, things that would feel really good to other people are painful to us. So hugs feel really good, right? But not if you have a sunburn. Okay, Bruce can see the sunburn, so he's not going to run up and hug me then. However, he can't necessarily see some of the emotional weirdness about me. Like, he didn't used to not know that every time somebody got really quiet, I thought something bad was going to happen. House I grew up in. If somebody's quiet, you knew damn well it was going to hit the fan pretty soon. So, when we were first together, you know that one too? No kidding, God. When we were first together, Bruce would come home sometimes and he'd be really quiet, and I would get really scared. I think, oh shit, one more man doesn't like me, he's leaving. Something bad's wrong. And finally, one day, Bruce got that this was going on, that I was being really, really scared when he was quiet. And he said, look, I'm a dentist, for God's sake. I have my hands in people's mouths. I have to talk all day long. I never get to stop. When I get home, sometimes I just need not to say anything for a few minutes. And then he said, and if there's ever something wrong, I said, by the way, I thought you were mad when you were quiet. He said, no, let me tell you, if there's ever something wrong, I'll let you know that, and I'll let you know what it's about. If I know, and if I don't know, I'll let you know as soon as I figure it out. Well, so what does that do for me? I never have to feel afraid again when he's quiet. Okay. So everything that goes on in the house we grew up in, we play out in the relationships we're in. Well, then if you add to that I don't know about you guys, I wasn't too good the first 20 times. So I had to have quite a lot of experience with relationships before kind of getting it right. So then we expect the same thing, right? And I remember the guy who would be late coming home because he was stopping at the baths on the way. Kind of not my style. It was pretty hard for me. So there was a little while there when if Bruce wasn't around every second, I would think, fooled me once. So all that weirdness. So however we learn then to become more flexible, to kind of cut our partners a break and find out what's really going on with them, instead of just making the assumptions that the things we think are true are true. And keep in mind in religious backgrounds, there's this belief that things are not what they appear to be. So you're always trying to believe something is different from the way it obviously is. And then how do you do that? Well, you just have to figure out that there's something going on behind the scenes that makes all of this crazy shit make sense, right? Well, it never does. But we even use those kinds of devices when we start looking at other people and interpreting other people's behavior and interpreting our own behavior. It's all just really weird stuff. So anyway, here you are in a relationship with somebody, and we have totally different sets of sensitive points. And we're constantly banging into each other's sensitive spots. Well, when that happens, we always do that. We all believe the same thing. We always believe if you touch something that hurts, you're mean. We also believe that it's intentional. We also believe that if you were sensitive, you would know this about me, and you'd know what hurts me, and you wouldn't do it. And if I have to tell you about it, just forget it, right? So there's this weird magical thinking that goes on in relationships. Now, I'm trying to think how to do this kind of briefly. There's some really predictable stages of relationships. We absolutely know how they work. And they are a constant journey from all this unconscious stuff, this magical stuff that happens. And as they become more mature, as the relationship is mature, then everything becomes conscious. Harville Hendrix talks about unintentional versus intentional behaviors. What it means is that this phase is all going on kind of in the shadows. It's just happening in a real primitive way. It's all about feelings and stuff like that, and there's not anything very conscious going on. So the first two phases of relationships are in this unconscious phase. There's the first one, which is like what we call falling in love, or the romantic phase. Is it easier if I get a different page, maybe? Use all the help I can get most of the time, right?
We all can.
Oh, cool. Thanks, Larry.
Be done.
Yeah, he looks a little like Vanna, doesn't he? Okay, so love relationships are about the journey from unconscious motivation to conscious motivation, or from unintentional or kind of reactive stuff to intentional stuff. So over here, we're just doing what we do. And over here, we're considering what we do, and we're doing it intentionally. All right. Now, the first phase of a relationship, first two phases of relationships are all unconscious. They're all motivated by the unconscious part of the brain. The first one, the romantic phase, is the one where you meet somebody, you're attracted to them, you fall in love, and they kind of always start the same. You have a huge sense of well-being. You have people say things like, "Gosh, it feels like I've always known you." Remember that one? The one that's like, "I start a sentence, you can finish it for me." We're spending huge amounts of time thinking about all the things, finding out about each other, and then we start looking for similarities. And there's the one favorite one from a friend says, "My God, your aunt has a Volkswagen. I had a Volkswagen. We're meant for each other. You wear clothes, I wear clothes. Oh my God, we both have. It was ordained by God that we should meet." So weird things go on. We get this huge rush of chemicals in the brain, basically. Floods the brain with these chemicals that make people feel really, really good. So you have a sense of well-being. We also have this skyrocketing libido. So this is the kind of thing where you meet somebody, you stay up all night making love, you get to the office in the morning, you manage to call 7 times during the day just to say to say I'm thinking about you. You make reservations for dinner, you order flowers, you go to the theater and you do the same thing, make love all night again, right? And this goes on for days and days and days. Well, during that period of time, everybody feels really good because there's one other person in the whole world whose only concern at all is getting to know me and making me feel good, right? So that goes on for a little while. And then the brain stops producing these chemicals. Now, one of the things that happens, by the way, when this particular cocktail of chemicals is getting produced, is that the brain is flooded with them. But these chemicals are only produced in one other instance. They're produced when we're in this falling in love process, but they're also produced in the presence of danger. Yeah. Okay. So you can get the same flooding of this chemical cocktail by bungee jumping, or pretty much anything else. This is what we think of as falling in love. Well, what it really is about is this vague sense of feeling afraid. Because what's the beginning of falling in love? I like you so much, God, I'm scared to death you don't like me as much as I do. It's the one where you sit and wait for the phone call hoping. So as long as we have this sense that we may lose the other person, then we believe we're in love. Does that make sense? And it's so primitive, it's unbelievable, but it's that vague fear of losing that we think of as falling in love. Now, I have a friend who says this is what all love songs are about. This is like Some Enchanted Evening. This is all the stuff from Broadway, the old Broadway. Gay guys, strangers in the night, but girls, it's about pack the U-Haul, and all that kind of stuff. All right. So this is a really wonderful, exciting period, but it changes, and then you go from this romantic feeling to this thing that's called the power struggle, or power impasse, or whatever. And over here, feels like you're living with your best friend. This is like you have been stuck with the worst enemy. It starts kind of subtly usually. This is when you get some version of, where would you like to go to dinner? Oh, I don't care, you just decide. Well, how about Mexican food? I don't think so. Well, how about Chinese food? I don't think so. And you go through every restaurant in town, and then you're finally desperate, and you go to Barnaby's, and halfway through dinner he says, I hate this goddamn restaurant. Why don't you ever ask me where I want to go, right? So this is, that one. I mean, we've all been there, right? So that's kind of the beginning of this other unconscious part of the relationship. Well, it appears that the big transition, two things happen. This period is kind of time limited. It just by nature lasts about 6 months, because that's what the brain can crank out. It can go on longer, by the way, a lot longer if it's a long distance relationship. If somebody is involved with somebody else, affairs can last for years, and people stay. Who have you known who had an affair that went on for years and years and years? They claimed that they were in love and couldn't wait to get together. Somebody dumps the husband. They get together, and it's over in no time, right? Well, it appears that the thing that kind of changes that is the big C, the big commitment thing. Because what happens the minute we make commitment? All of a sudden, the fear that the other one's leaving is gone. And then when that happens, we get this new version of kind of buyer's remorse. It was like, oh God, everything about him was perfect, except, damn, he does snore. Or I really like guys with butts, or whatever it is. Then this is some version of, well, I actually noticed that she doesn't know everything about me. So, and that's when all the struggle starts. So, and it goes on and on and on. So if this is about like love songs, this is about country western music.
About what? I'm sorry.
Country western music.
Oh.
I'm so miserable I thought you were here,
I keep missing you, baby, but my aim's getting better.
God. So what happens then, we meet somebody, we fall in love, it's all wonderful. Then we kind of make a commitment, and the commitment can be simple. It can be like, as much as we become exclusive, or we just understand that we always see each other on Friday night, or we make a commitment that we won't commit So all of these become commitments. Well, boom, that's enough to kick us from here into here. Then we got the brain stuff going on anyway, right? So we got the same thing going on. You meet somebody, you fall in love, you hit the wall, you dump them, you go out, find somebody new, fall in love, hit the wall, dump them. Well, this goes on and on and on. It becomes the revolving door that we all know about, right? And that works fine if you don't mind that when you're finished with all 250,000 gay men in Houston, that you go on to Dallas, and when you're finished there, you can go on somewhere else, right? Well, yeah, no, sure. But the other thing that can happen is usually, after this goes on for a long, long time, people either get really bitter and they go, gay relationships never work. Anyway, I'm not doing this anymore. Besides that, I can get all this easy stuff without working at it, right? Or they go, damn, I think there might be something wrong with the way I'm thinking about this. The first thing people say is, I really picked the wrong people. Okay. But then there's this kind of period when people start to become more conscious of stuff. So we're starting to think about it. Now, what's really going on here? And people read self-help books and get online and all that kind of stuff and finally call the shrink. And first of all, people are kind of examining, usually, it almost always is, the choice of partners. And then it starts to get a little bit deeper than that, and people start to look at themselves. What the hell's going on with me that I'm doing this kind of thing? Well, if you're still in a relationship when this is going on, in this kind of beginning stage of awareness, people are starting to look more at themselves. What is it about me that makes this so sensitive? Why do I get so freaked out when Bruce is 5 minutes late? Why does it upset? What's going on with me that I get upset about all this stuff? Over time, couples then start to learn to do the things that make the relationship work. It's all luck over here. Pure luck and chemistry, right? And over here, by the last stage, people have gotten to the place that they know exactly what needs to go on in the relationship, what feels good, what makes people happy, how they get through hard times. And it's all really conscious. People simply know what to do. Well, then a weird thing happens, and in this last stage, the feeling, the energy is very much like this. There's that same sense of well-being, the same sense of excitement, the same sense of satisfaction, but without the fear of losing the other person. Does that make enough sense?
Not really. I've been there.
Well, this is a really, really funny example of this, and it's not easy, but that is what the way relationships work, and it's about becoming increasingly conscious. Am I going too long?
No, you're fine.
Okay. Let me tell you a kind of funny story about when Bruce and I first met. We had known each other's name forever because we've both been really, really visible in the gay community, the gay professional community forever and ever. So we never knew how we hadn't met. But we met, and it was kind of like the night we met, I went home and said to a house guest, this is it, I've met him. And she said, straight gal, she said, if you pick up the phone and call him, I'm breaking your fucking fingers. I'd awakened her at 2 a.m. to tell her this. So Bruce called at 6:30 the next morning and invited me to a barbecue, which is not exactly my style, but I would have gone to a pig race with him. But I couldn't, but he called me I think 6 more times that week to invite me to the same barbecue that I'd already told him was something I had to do. So we finally, I think it was 3 weeks before we could find time to have dinner together, and that was kind of it. But about a month later, one night Bruce said, well, I have to go home. And I thought, well, okay, he's been perfect, but now he's just like all the others. He's out cheating, no doubt, found somebody else. So I went out and did what I do very best. I went to a bar and I got really drunk, and at 2:30 when they made me leave, I called Bruce and I said, can't stand being away from you. And he said, well, come on over. So I arrive, and he's standing outside with a little overnight bag, and he said, look, I'll go to your house because you don't get up as early as I do. So he did. Well, that's all really cool. And I'm thinking, wow, for the first time in my life, somebody can put up with somebody as crazy as I am, doesn't mind that I'm needy. This is perfect. Well, about a month later, the same thing happened. Bruce said, I just have to get home. I want to do some sculpting, and I need to exercise, and I've got early patients in the morning. So I did my usual deal, right? So I called him at 2:30, and this time he said, I have to be up at 5. I wish you wouldn't call me at 2:30 in the morning. And I think, yep, this is it. Caught him. Big damn cheat. I know a liar when I see one. Well, he called me the next morning, and he said, got to figure out what's going on. If this is so important to you, I have to find some way to kind of make this better. I was thinking, wow, boy, what a good cover. When caught his guilty ass. But I knew he'd been in therapy for a few years. So I figured he'd learned a lot. And he called me at noon, and he said, I've been thinking about this. He said, I don't really know why I had to go. Said I had to go home because we only lived 5 blocks apart. He said I could have just come over and stayed at your house, right? Then he called me about 6 that afternoon. He said, look, I had a key made for you. You can just come over whenever you want to. Well, at this point, I think, wait, this guy is too slick. He's too good. Besides that, he's giving me a key to his apartment. What the fuck is this about? Well, then we finally go out. We're going to have dinner. And I'm thinking, I got to tell him this. I am so scared. What's really going on is I'm terrified, and I'm doing everything I can to screw up this relationship, right? So we get to the restaurant, order a bottle of wine. Before the wine gets there, Bruce says, I got to tell you something. He said, I am so scared. I'm going to screw up this relationship. He said, I don't have to do all this stuff. This is not about logistics. This is about my being scared. I go, shit, he goes to therapy for a few years and gets it together like that. I've been on the couch 20 years, and I can't figure it out. So, that's kind of it was a perfect example of what happens when people get scared. If he hadn't been as aware as he is of himself, he would have said, this son of a bitch is too needy, and besides that, he's nuts. And I'm out of here, right? So, those kinds of awarenesses are so terribly important. I'll tell you one other kind of funny story. And when we were first together, we started to notice that the way we liked to spend weekends was really different. Like, my idea of a perfect weekend is to be up by about 5 on Saturday morning with loads of places to go and people to see, and I want to, catch somebody for cocktails, go out for dinner, catch a little theater, and then meet people for drinks later and do the same thing the next morning, right? And Bruce's idea of a perfect weekend is to sleep until 2, order in a pizza, watch a little sci-fi, order in Chinese, watch more sci-fi, and do the same thing the next day, right? Well, we figured out a couple of things. Like, one of the things we knew from the very real early on was that the one thing we really wanted was to be able to stay together. Like, I knew more than anything else I didn't want him to leave. Well, we were both smart enough to figure out that nobody leaves the place they're happy, right? I mean, that's not rocket science. Nobody leaves if they're happy. Well, so what happens? We figure out then that the way we both win every weekend is to be sure the other guy's happy. So some weekends, Bruce wakes me up with all these things to do and places to go and people to see. And there are other weekends when I close the draperies, crank the air conditioning down to 68, unplug the phones, throw the cat out, close the doors and leave him alone. Well, the way it works then is that every weekend we're both winning because the other guy's getting what he wants, which is the guarantee that we're both happy, which means we get to have what we want most in the whole world. But how different from that is the rules we all got taught. You got to fight for yourself. You better get what you want, or you better do what you're told. So, is this enough of me? I think it probably is. God.
Probably about 5 more minutes before we need to preserve the restaurant.
So, I'd like to hear what's on your mind.
One of the things I always thought about, because the reason why I wasn't successful in a relationship, because in my background, I knew homosexuality was wrong, so I did not deserve a relationship, so therefore I should be unhappy, and if I do have somebody with me, I'm going to make them unhappy too at the same time. You're pretty enlightening. I like what you had to say.
Oh man, you got lots of gold stars from me. Thank you. Yeah.
I learned in one group that communication was key. It was communication, 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 if you want to be in a relationship. And so, and rigorous honesty. And so that's how I've tried to work with my relationships, and I've found a lot of success in that, in achieving long-term relationships. And but it's still not the easiest thing in the world. So it's a challenge. It's a lot of work, but also being willing to do that work, and I think there's also trust issues there. Wondering if your partner is going to be as honest with you as you want to be with them. And so there's also those things.
Yeah.
But it is a lot of work.
There are a couple of curious issues that are different between men and women. Like, the issue for men frequently is about real connection, really, really deep intimacy. And the issue for women is one of independence. And women talk more in relationships, lesbians talk more in relationships about this belief that the partner should meet my needs, and you should know what my needs are and meet them. And if I have to tell you that it means a lot to me for you to send flowers, then you don't love me anyway. Which is very much an infantile reflection of the mother-daughter relationship. The issue with men is different in that it's the issue of becoming so connected, and that we're able to be close enough to love and care and depend on each other. I think people don't talk about the differences in that. Oftentimes the communication thing gets real difficult because, for one thing, 89% of the therapists in this country are women. And any way you cut it, we still rely, no matter how much we know, we rely a lot on our own experiences. There's a huge movement in the country that says partners' jobs are to meet our needs. Well, you got to think about whether that's really true or not. To some degree, it's kind of almost not possible. Because here's the way it works. I tell you that I really want you to wake me up twice a day, or twice in the morning with a cup of coffee, a big hug and kiss, and say, I love you. And you do it, and what do I say? You shouldn't mean anything. You're only doing this because I asked you to. Yeah. Right? So, that's the perfect example of that infantile reenactment thing. So, yeah.
I think it's really helpful. I think it's really helpful the way you drew the steps out like that. It takes some of that emotional impact out and that charge of you don't love me or you don't care enough, or to just see it like, oh yeah, it's step 1, 2, 3, 4. We're in step number 7 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It helps you to break it apart so you can see what's happening, and it's not just like this relationship's a failure too.
Yeah.
I appreciate this because I've been saying lately, it's like, I think I just suck at relationships. Well, this is my third relationship in 35, 36 years, so I don't think I suck, but but I've been feeling that way. But then I'm like, oh, this is helpful. Yeah, I see what's happening now.
Yeah, thanks for telling me that. Most things are not as scary if you know what's going on. And here's one, let me tell you this one other little thing that's real important in relationships, and then this is it, okay? You get, somebody hold this thing for me, will you?
Come on, Mike.
Okay. Keep. Did you see it? He's got to keep a straight face through this, right? It's impossible to ignore this one. Okay. Human beings are simply trying, remember, we're just trying to stay alive, right? The only thing in the world we're trying to do is survive. Bottom line. So anytime we feel afraid, we think our survival is being threatened, we do anything to get rid of the fear. It doesn't matter whether the fear is rational or not. Okay. Now, if you look up and see a tiger in the door, you're going to feel afraid. But you'll go, shit, there's a tiger in the door, I better get out of here, right? And you know what's going on. But other times, we have that same sensation. We feel afraid, we look up, there's no tiger in the door. We don't have the ability to tolerate fear without explaining it. So we just make up something. Like once I had an awful IRS audit, right? I would suddenly have these arising anxiety episodes, and I'd go, oh, damn, they were auditing me again, or Bruce's 5 minutes, I don't think this without him, but somebody's 5 minutes late getting home, First, it's killed in a car wreck, right? I have enormous abandonment issues. Or then it would be, he's not in a car wreck, he's at the baths, for God's sake, All that kind of stuff. Okay, so we make up explanations for the fear we feel, right? Now, in every relationship, there's one group of people feel safer when they're real close to somebody. Other people feel safer when they're distant. In every relationship, there's one person who has just this much more tolerance for closeness than the other one, or this much more tolerance for distance. And it's just this much. It tips so easily. So you get two people who are together. One guy gets a little bit afraid, and he just wants to move a little closer, just to feel safer. Well, when he does, it's just a little too close for this one, who takes this teeny little step back. All of this is going on without anybody thinking about it. And then this one moves in close and this one moves away. And this goes on and on and on and on and on. After a while, eventually, this one says some version of, I've been trying to get close to you forever, and no matter what I do, you just keep moving away. You're just never quite there when I want you. So I give up and I'm out of here. And they step back. And the second they do, it's too much distance for this one who goes, wait. I just wanted a little bit of time for myself. I didn't want you to leave. Move in close. This one goes, been through this before. I'm not falling for this one again. You don't mean it anyway. You're just doing this because you think that's what I want you to do. All right? After a while, this one says, look, I made some mistakes before. I was trying to make them right. But no matter what I do, you won't let me make it right. So I give up. I'm gone. And then this one goes, wait, not so far. And then the whole thing starts all over again. Well, it goes on in every relationship in the world. The fantasy is I'll find somebody who wants to be all glommed up, just like I do, or I'll find somebody who wants to be really independent, like I am. Never works that way. So this is always going on in every relationship. But if people know that's what's happening, then when we start getting weird, we can go, God, here I am acting all neurotic all over again. I think I'll just not do that. So the secret is pretty simple. If your partner knows that you're pretty insecure and you get scared, what you want to do is move in real close. One, partner will be a little more tolerant of it. They'll just go, she's just feeling scared. And then I can put up with that. Or you'll go, look, he's really got a lot on his mind right now. There's no reason for me to kind of bother him with my stuff. I can deal with this myself, just like a big boy. So it starts to make all this stuff real easy, or a lot easier. It makes it way easier when when I can simply say to Bruce, I'm just feeling so damn neurotic and clingy and scared and weird right now. Just want you to hold my hand, take care of me, and make me feel safe. And he goes, okay. Or he can say, God, I am really, really worn out. I need some time by myself. And I can go, okay, because I know he's not going to go away. So, does that mean anything? Yeah.
Yeah, but how do you get to that phase? I mean, that takes a very open, lots of therapy and figuring out the other person.
Well,
Some people
yes.
never get to that point.
People get to that point because the alternative's not very nice.
By the way, Tony,
So that's it.
workshops for singles and couples every so often.
Oh, yeah, I do sometimes.
With little commercials or.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the commercial. And
On your website too. That's-
I was just going to say, I think that those of us that grew up as Jehovah's Witnesses have a lot of abandonment issues because when we left our religion, were abandoned by our families.
Mhm.
Because I know I still have that fear, and I want to feel safe in my relationships. However, there's still that fear
Yeah.
of abandonment, and it goes really, really deep. And
Yeah.
It's very, very scary,
Mhm.
and it's something that I have to bury very deep, and it still will come out and haunt me because I am terrified of being abandoned by everybody around me.
I think you're really insightful to know that. And, keep in mind that hell, this is one of the major manipulations, right? You don't do what we want you to, you're out. Boom. Well, there are some ways, interestingly enough, there are ways to get to that and heal it. And I mean, I could go on forever, but I'm not going to. But the healing process there is an emotional healing process that's almost miraculous. I mean, and it's a natural process. It's not intellectual. Unfortunately, the intellectual part helps if we understand stuff, but it doesn't take care of the deep pain. And so much of what goes on in psychotherapy now is all about this intellectual stuff. We get lots of cognitive behavioral kind of treatment and those sorts of things. Well, it makes it possible for you to sit through something, but it doesn't get to the place that the pain is healed. And we only know one way that really gets to that, and it's the deep psychodynamic, psychoanalytic kind of therapies, the ones that are entirely emotion-based. So here's the simple way it happens. I mean, it's so not simple. But fundamentally, if you've gone often enough to the place where you feel that horrible, horrible, horrible agony and fear of being deserted or abandoned or whatever, rejected, whatever, after a while, that breaks through. And what you always find out is underneath it, there's something else. And it falls in two layers. People are either, beneath the fear, people are either very, very sad or they're very, very angry. So, and the layering depends on the person. But when you get to the place that you no longer are kind of stuck at feeling afraid of whatever it is, then you start to feel the next layer. People get profoundly angry that people will say, I can't believe they fucked with me that way. They get furious, just furious with the people who've done this to them. And then once the anger starts to subside, then the next thing that happens is that there's this profound sadness and self-pity. When people get to the place that they go, that was just it's awful that I had to go through that. Well, self-pity is forbidden, remember, in our society. And it's the very last part of the healing process. So until people get to the place that they feel badly for themselves for having been treated this way, it never quite gets finished. So that's when that touches and it pops up again. That's, boy, what a oversimplified way, but I think it's time for me to stop. Hey, thanks so much for having me. I love
If you want, feel free to plug your website and give out your phone number if you want.
Houston Therapist.
Oh, my website's HoustonTherapist.com. My name's Tony Carroll, and I have a phone number, 713-527-0000. Thanks. Bye.